Coming up this weekend in the women's bantamweight division, this is a weird bucket of muscles type of fight. We have the elbow queen, Lina Lansberg, taking on Sheetara, Mayra Bueno Silva. A couple of interesting gyms going at it. You got Redline taking on American Top Team, where Bueno Silva is now based. And this one does hold significance because it's number 12 versus number 14. But if you look at it for Mayra Bueno Silva, comes in off Dana White's Contender Series, picks up a really nice win there. She fights Maro Barella to a win. She has a majority decision against Montana De La Rosa, lost to Manafioro. But the last two fights, a win over Wu Yanan and a win over Stephanie Edgar, have really netted her a lot of praise. And for Bueno Silva, just in the UFC, she's already had 2 fight of the night. So really interesting that way for her. Her last time out was the did she tap, did she not tap against Edgar? She definitely tapped. So for Bueno Silva, another opportunity to kind of advance the chains for a football term. And if you look at it for her, she's already 31. She's getting the move going. She's got the record kind of like Amanda Lemos, who was like a 9-1-1, 9-2-1, really kind of getting into the nitty gritty. Whereas for Lansberg, and the reason I say it's a weird bucket of muscles, it's not muscles, it's the muscles that you eat and steam. Why is it a weird bucket of muscles fight? Because Lina Lansberg is a few days away from her 41st birthday. She's lost 3 fights in a row, one to Bellator's Sarah McMahon, one to Penny Kanzad in the rematch, where, listen, Lansberg won the second round, and against Carol Hossa, majority decision loss. But the only reason it's that way is because one of the judges scored a round for Lansberg, the other 2 scored all 3 rounds for Hossa, but Hossa lost a point in the middle round due to an illegal knee. So realistically, most thought Hossa won all 3 rounds. So for Lansberg, she's really on a bad losing streak, and not much can be said, but the elbows are still there, and she's still ticking, so she can make it tough.
Are they, though? Like, that's the problem with Lina Lansberg. This fight, to me, is like a seesaw. At one point, I thought very highly of Lina Lansberg, and I thought not that much of Mayra Bueno Silva, for being honest. This is my opinion of both these fighters now. Mayra Bueno Silva's looked really good as of late, and it looks like she's been able to turn the corner, not only with who she's fighting, because of course level of opposition matters with a fighter's record, but how she's been able to go out there and demonstrate her own skills. Mayra Bueno Silva looks like a well-rounded fighter now. I think that's fair to say. She mixes in her takedowns with her striking. She's a good Muay Thai fighter on the outside. Her output's not great. She doesn't have top-tier power by any means, but still, she has good technique, decent volume. The problem is, there's just one area where Bueno Silva can struggle with this fight. If Lina Lansberg is able to do that clinch-heavy game plan where she puts Bueno Silva up against the clinch and really wears on her heavily, I think Lina can win this fight, but that's the big issue. Bueno Silva is the smaller fighter in this fight. I know it has them listed as having similar heights and similar reaches. Lina Lansberg has fought at featherweight, though, in the past, and has fought at bantamweight for the majority of her career. She fought Chris Cyborg.
That's in her UFC debut.
Exactly. So for Lansberg, she's a lot more used to going out there and having those physical, grinding style of fights against much bigger fighters, and I think that will be important in this matchup because, again, I don't think Lina Lansberg can go out there and outstrike her from the outside from this point of her career. She might be able to have some success with the wrestling, but again, I do worry about the submission ability of Bueno Silva if it hits the mat. I just think Lansberg can do a good job of holding her up against the cage, and you hate for that to be the one big X factor for her to win the fight, but I think Silva's the much more active fighter from the outside. She has better kicks.
I can back it up.
And on the mat, she's way more dangerous with her own submission ability.
Lansberg, IFMA 2008-2012 world champion of Muay Thai. She fought Valentina Shevchenko in Muay Thai. 37-11 was her Muay Thai record. That's all very impressive. And it translated into her MMA career and getting her wins. Now, in the UFC, debuted against Chris Cyborg back in 2016. Lansberg is 4-6. Okay, so 4-6. That's a 10-fight UFC career. That's not that bad. She was favored to win 1 of 10 fights. She was a winner against Lucia Pudzilova at a -345. In every other fight, she's been more than a 2-1 dog. So in 3 of those, she's cashed. You like that. Yeah, that's fun. But when you look at it, Matt, she's had less than 50 significant strikes in all but 2 of her fights in the UFC. Her fight against Tanya Evinger landed 50 significant strikes, and her fight against Lucia Pudzilova, where she was favored to win. Her strike differential is a -1.16, and it's 2.7 strikes per minute to 3.86 received. That's well below UFC average.
With all that being said, though, I still agree with the game plan of Lansberg can go out there, not throw any significant strikes, and hold Bueno Silva up against the cage and have success to that level. Again, it's not going to be the most aesthetically pleasing fight, but Lansberg is the much more stronger fighter, especially in that clinch. If she can get the double overhooks and lock down on her, I think Bueno Silva's going to have a hard time going for some of those trips and some of those clinch takedowns.
Bueno Silva, much more active striker on the feet, but receives more damage numerically. In the UFC, 4.23 strikes landed per minute, significant, to 5.01 received. And if you look at it, she can struggle if she gets crowded with a lot of volume. You can see Bueno Silva in some of these fights where, I don't know, maybe it was just the fact that she didn't have a lot of pro fights coming into the UFC, just not that kind of experience, but trying to figure out the fight IQ and changing the game plan on the fly. If you threw a lot of volume, you could kind of cause her issues, and if you mixed in the threat of the takedown, that's where Bueno Silva would really get away from her game plan. You can really stifle it. Now, Lansberg's not going out there and trying for takedowns against any of these women in this division, nor do I expect her to against somebody like Bueno Silva. So in a pure stand-up battle, I kind of already tipped my hand at this point. So we have a look at the odds in the matchup, Matt. Lansberg is not favored to win this fight, as she normally is not. So Bueno Silva minus 400, Lansberg plus 300. We have a look at the Topology votes. Price us there to you. I'm going to say over under 92.5% Bueno Silva.
I'll say over.
I'm going to say over. 96% Bueno Silva on 459 total votes, 73% by decision. For the 4% that have Lansberg, 80% by decision. If Lansberg wins, I think she wins by decision. I think Mayra Bueno Silva wins this fight because she can strike better from the outside, and she's done a better job of closing the pocket, getting out of the pocket, and trying to avoid some of those clinch situations in a fight like this.
I don't love Bueno Silva getting out of the pocket. She's good at getting inside of it. I just don't think it's going to be a big issue in this fight. Again, Lina Lansberg's not a big kicker. She's going to follow her opponent quite a bit too, so if Bueno Silva just doesn't walk straight backwards, it's going to be really hard for Lansberg to cut off the cage and really land meaningful offense. And for all those reasons, I do favor Bueno Silva. And again, I like her leg kicks from the outside too. I think those are really going to be able to help her slow down some of the forward movement of Lina Lansberg, so I do have Silva as the pick.
Both of us going with American Top Team's own Sheetara, Bueno Silva to get the win. Matt, coming up this weekend, lots of UFC debuts. Jamal Pogues taking on Josh Parisian. That's an interesting fight in the heavyweight division. You're not going to want to miss that. And the rest of the action, keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.